Now, a few weeks back, I got my chance to unbox and get my first look at the brand new Samsung Galaxy Book2 Pro 360. It is absolutely gorgeous with its beautiful all aluminum metal design. It's a beautiful color. It's a burgundy color this year. Absolutely gorgeous. It's got a full HD Super AMOLED display, 13.3 inches, but you could also get it in a 15.6 inch display, and I think that might be the one you may want to go with. We're going to get into it and more in this video. Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and this is my review of the Samsung Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 here for 2022. Coming up.
Now, before we get to the device, I want to let everybody know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I'm not being paid by Samsung. I'm not being sponsored by Samsung. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Samsung is not getting copy approval. They're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. Now, this unit was purchased with my own money. I did not receive a review unit from Samsung. Pricing for the Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 starts at $1,249.99. That's for the 13-inch model, and it goes up from there. And the 15.6-inch model comes in at $1,349.99, $100 more. And again, that's only with 8 gigabytes of RAM. I would step up to the model above that, which will give you 16 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of SSD storage, and that comes in at $1,549.99. These are not cheap. You are definitely paying a premium here, that's for sure. But keep in mind, Samsung does have a very nice trade-in program that allows you to trade in some of your older devices, phones, tablets, laptops, so check that out as well to get some discounts off that. And I will leave links for these products in the description below for those that are interested. And right off the bat, you're going to notice the design, which is absolutely gorgeous with 3 different colors on this. You can get this in graphite, silver, and burgundy, which is what I have here. And it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm loving this new burgundy color, and the finish is all metal with a rock solid build with very little flex in the chassis. Now, this comes in at 1.04 kilograms or 2.29 pounds. This 13-inch model is really easy to take with you on the go. It's super portable, but don't discount that 15.6-inch model either. Although it has a bigger footprint, it is also very light in its own regard. I already covered the ports in the unboxing video, but for those that didn't see it, there are not too many ports. On the left side are 2 USB-C ports, the second one being a Thunderbolt 4 port, which is full function, does data, charge, and display out. And moving over to the right side is a micro SD card reader, and next to that is another USB-C port. It's a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port, not a Thunderbolt 4 port, and next to that is a 3.5 millimeter microphone headphone combo jack. I would say this is not the greatest port selection, but considering how thin and light this laptop is, I'm not surprised. There's no USB-A and there's no HDMI. Those are 2 notable ports that are missing. All right, let's get into the display, and I think there's some nice improvements here over the last generation, specifically the brightness. Now, last year, I couldn't even break 300 nits. It was actually a little bit below that, and it was a very glossy display, compounding the problem. Well, I'm happy to report that this year they've improved the brightness. Actually, I got 400 nits in my measurements, making this a much better display to use in both indoor and outdoor use. It is still glossy, not quite as glossy as last year, but glossy nonetheless. So you will notice some glare and reflections depending on your lighting conditions. Now, one thing they did stick with was the same resolution. It's a full HD resolution. That's 1920 by 1080. And yes, that is still a 16:9 aspect ratio, which although is great for consuming media, watching Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube, which have been highly optimized for 16:9. That means you'll have no black bars on the top and the bottom. I would have preferred a move to a 16:10, which would have given you a taller nature or vertical nature of the display, showing more on the display, doing less scrolling when it comes to web browsing. And they also stuck with a 60 hertz refresh rate. Would have been nice to give us a higher refresh rate, such as 90 or even 120. That would have been more smooth in terms of the OS, more fluid experience. But no, they stuck with 60 hertz, which of course will help out in battery life. But again, it would have been nice to have that option. And of course, this being a Super AMOLED display means you're going to get the super deep blacks, the really vibrant colors, the really high contrast, everything you'd come to expect with an AMOLED display. Now, it does have some really good color accuracy with a 0.96 Delta E score. Remember, anything below 2 is considered color accurate, so it doesn't disappoint in that regard. And it has really great coverage of the color gamut. You're looking at 100% sRGB, 99% Adobe RGB, 98% of the DCI-P3 wide color gamut, and 97% NTSC. Well, what does that all mean? Well, if you are a content creator that does Lightroom, Photoshop, video editing, and of course color grading, this panel will definitely be a great choice because it does have that great coverage of that color gamut. And for those sensitive to PWM or pulse width modulation that, causes headaches and has some eye strain and stuff like that, I did detect it. I'm not sensitive to that, but I understand some people are. So if you go below 50% in terms of the brightness, you will notice that. But above 50%, it's not detectable. But just something to be aware of. And I get a lot of comments and questions on my channel asking whether or not there's any screen burn-in issues that I've experienced with an OLED or an AMOLED display. And the answer is absolutely not. I have not experienced it. I have reviewed many OLED and AMOLED displays over the years. That has really not been an issue. And I think the technology has gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. And they do give you a screensaver that will kick in after an allotted amount of time. So that's a good preventative measure. But my experience has been there's no screen burn-in on this laptop or any other AMOLED display I've reviewed the last few years.
So this is the front-facing camera on the Samsung Galaxy Book2 Pro 360, a 1080p webcam, and as you can see, I've got auto framing on. So if I move to the side here, it keeps me in frame automatically. You could, of course, turn that off. There's also some other effects here. You can do the background blur effect. Pretty interesting effects that you can do with this. She's beautifying me. And of course, you could do custom where you can actually play with the settings. So there's a lot of customization you can do. The background effect is pretty cool. Again, we saw it on the Lenovo Yoga 9i. It's here as well. I want to know what you think. Let me know in that comment section below.
All right, let's get into the performance. And if you saw my unboxing and first look review, you know I had issues with the multi-core performance on this laptop. And the reason being is it's so thin and light and the thermal envelope is so limited, I think they had to temper the performance. And that's why we didn't see quite as good multi-core performance as we did on, say, something like the Yoga 9i running the same chipset, the Core i7 1260p. Now, this has 4 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores for a total of 12 cores. So you're hoping it's going to have better performance, get a better efficiency. Not quite what we see here with this Samsung Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 here for 2022. So we're seeing about half of the multi-core performance that we saw on that Yoga 9i. So if you want better performance and you want this laptop, go for that 15-inch version because that will have better multi-core performance as you see from these numbers, scoring 9276 over the 5301 as you get on this 13-inch laptop. And that's because the 15-inch is a bigger device that'll allow for better cooling and therefore you'll get better performance in the end. And it goes without saying, this is really not a gaming laptop. There are better options out there. Now, this does have integrated Iris Xe graphics, which are decent, of course. If you lower the settings, you can get some playable frame rates on some of the titles. But at the end of the day, the performance is really not there to really do some heavy gaming on this. I would go with something with a discrete GPU, of course, or go for the 15-inch version. That'll do a little bit better. But again, these are not gaming laptops. Now, you can connect to an external GPU on this. That is an option to go with, but of course, that adds to the expense and it may be more cumbersome. But don't get me wrong, for everyday use, you're going to be fine. Microsoft Office, email, web browsing, watching movies on this has been great. No hiccups at all. You're just not going to get that multi-core performance where you're really pushing the cores, and that's where those extra efficiency cores come in to help out. So I think at the end of the day, if you're a general purpose user and want something thin and light, you won't be disappointed with this laptop. But if you're a performance-based user, I would look at the 15-inch or something else that has a discrete GPU, of course. Now, as far as the thermals and temperatures are concerned, never getting overly hot with this laptop, but they do throttle down the performance, and that's because it's so thin and light, not surprising here. And it never gets overly hot in terms of those surface temperatures, so you can use it on your lap. You won't burn your skin or anything like that. It gets a little bit warm, but never overly hot. That's been pretty good. Now, it does have that single fan for cooling, and you will notice it kick in the performance mode when you're running it. It's under heavy load. And as you can see, it never gets above 37, 38 decibels, which is pretty good. Not too loud, and that's exactly what you want with a laptop. You don't want to interfere with what you're doing. Okay, let's talk about battery. This sports a 63 watt-hour battery, and it did 8 hours and 43 minutes on my continuous web surfing test over Wi-Fi at 150 nits. Not quite as good as the Yoga 9i or the Slim 7 Carbon that I recently took a look at. But I think it's a pretty decent number considering this does have that Full HD Super AMOLED display. Of course, Super AMOLED displays tend to use a lot more power unless you use a black background that helps with reducing the amount of power usage. But in the end of the day, I think this is a pretty decent number. I think you can expect anywhere from 6 to 7 hours depending on what you're doing in terms of real world usage. But please remember that everybody's use case is a little bit different, so your mileage may vary. Now, they do supply you with a 65 watt USB-C power adapter. It's actually pretty compact and it takes about 90 minutes to give you a full charge. That's pretty good. Now, I already opened up this laptop in the unboxing video. Check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. But once you're inside, there really is only one thing to really upgrade here, and that would be the SSD. Now, my unit that I purchased is the base model, and that only has 256 gigs of SSD storage, and it's only Gen 3, but this will support Gen 4 should you decide to change it out yourself. Now, this 256 gig SSD didn't have the greatest reads and writes, as evidenced by these numbers. Now, this comes with either 8 or 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM running in dual channel mode, so that's good. Now, I have the 8 gigabyte model, and that's not one I would recommend here in 2022. I think at a minimum you want 16 going forward. You'll get better performance out of it, and that is just the way it is here in 2022, so bear that in mind. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well, this is soldered into the motherboard as far as this RAM is concerned. That means you as the user cannot upgrade it later on. So when you're checking out, make sure you get enough RAM for your needs. Now, this has Wi-Fi 6E along with Bluetooth 5.1. Now, both have been working very well. I've had no issues since I've gotten this laptop, so that has been working well. Now, one thing to keep in mind, that card is soldered in as well, so you can't change it out down the road. So the bottom line when it comes to user upgradability, only the SSD is user upgradable. The rest is soldered into the motherboard, so you won't be able to upgrade it down the road. Now, if you're looking to open it with one finger, you could almost do it, not quite. Again, these hinges are designed to be 360-degree foldable, so you're not going to really get that with this laptop. Most convertibles can't do that. Now, as far as the keyboard itself is concerned, the keys are a bit on the shallow side, as I mentioned, but the tactility has been good, and the overall typing experience has been good, so really not too bad. Now, it does have a multi-stage backlight. Thought it worked okay, and I thought the typing experience in general was pretty good. Let's give it a listen. And I thought the Precision Touchpad has a decent size, not the biggest I've seen, and I thought it was very responsive when it comes to scrolling and all the gestures. Everything seemed to work as advertised. Now, this has stereo speakers. They're 4 watts, and it has a smart amp along with Dolby Atmos. Now, Dolby Atmos will give you really enhanced spatial audio, and it does help on this laptop somewhat. And this sound is by AKG. That's what tunes it. So let's take a listen, and let's compare it to one of its competitors, the Yoga 9i, which I recently reviewed. Let's give them a listen. Now, this being a 2-in-1 convertible means you could put it into different modes. Here I'm showing it in tent mode, great for recipes in the kitchen, watching media, consuming Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube have been great. Same goes for the stand mode, or what other people call the presentation mode. And of course, you could always put it into the tablet mode, great for use with the S Pen. Now, the S Pen is included at no additional cost, and it uses the Wacom EMR technology. You don't need a battery. It doesn't need to be charged. It just works right out of the box. It's not a Bluetooth one, though, like you get on the phone, but of course this did great for taking notes, sketching at artwork, great for any of your inking needs. I'm actually a big fan of the S Pen. Now, as far as storing the pen, they don't give you a silo anymore. And like last year's model, it sticks magnetically to the lid. And I thought the connection was pretty decent. Okay, let's bring it all home. What do I think about the Samsung Galaxy Book 2 Pro 360 here for 2022? Now, specifically, this 13-inch model is one I would not recommend, especially with that entry-level 8 gigabytes and 256 gigs of storage. Yes, it might be more enticing as being a less costly, but I would go for the 15-inch model with at least 16 gigabytes of RAM and go for the one with 1 terabyte of storage. It'll be faster, it'll be Gen 4, and you'll get better reads and writes, but overall performance on that 15-inch model will be better because the thermal envelope will be a little bit better because of the bigger footprint. Now, it's still nice and portable in that 15-inch category, but again, you won't be quite as portable as this 13-inch, but again, you'll get more screen real estate. Now, that Super AMOLED display is absolutely gorgeous. I think they made a lot of the improvements they needed to make. It's a little less reflective, although it is still reflective, but it is brighter, coming in at 400 nits as opposed to barely breaking 300 nits last year. In fact, I got below 300 nits last year. So big improvement as far as that Super AMOLED display. The downside, of course, being they stuck with a 16:9 aspect ratio, whereas the trend has been at least 16:10 or even 3:2 here in 2022. A little bit disappointing. They got left behind in that regard. Improved webcam here, full HD, 1080p. You have a lot of effects you could do, blurred background, you could change the color. I like the options they give you there. And I'm really digging this burgundy finish on it. It's a really nice look to it. It gives it a nice classy look, something a little bit different that we don't normally see. Now, as far as this 12th gen processor performance, as I mentioned, it's the Core i7 1260p. It's got its 12 cores, 4 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores. Worked okay for everyday use, Microsoft Office, email, web browsing. You'll be fine even with that 13-inch model. But the performance, especially the multi-core, won't be as good as some of its competition. Specifically, the 9i from the Yoga line and Lenovo's line that I showed you, that had double the performance, and that's because it had a better thermal envelope. Now, no 120 hertz option in terms of this display, no USB-A port, no HDMI port for that matter. So really, there are some things that they need to improve on the next generation. But overall, if you're looking for a sleek, portable, stunning-looking laptop with a gorgeous Full HD Super AMOLED display, this may be your ticket.
So what do you think about the Samsung Galaxy Book 2 Pro 360? Well, first thing I would do is I would have them shorten the name. I'm getting tired of having to try to say it correctly. But nonetheless, I thought it was a good laptop, especially the 13.3 inch, if you're on the road for very basic tasks, Microsoft Office, email, web browsing, consuming media, watching Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, and it really worked out well in that regard. Where you're not going to really be happy with is in the performance in terms of multi-core performance. So if you think that need the extra cores and stuff like that, I would look at other laptops running the same chipset. Again, this is that 12th gen Alder Lake, the Core i7 1260p. It has the 4 performance cores and the 8 efficiency cores. And I didn't notice it being that good, actually. I thought the Yoga 9i with the same chipset did a lot better, and that's because that had a better thermal envelope. So if you're gonna pick this laptop and you need that performance, look at that 15-inch version, because that one did pretty well in terms of the benchmarks. I did show some multi-core performance on that, and I think that's the one you want to go with. Not only that, it also gives you a bigger screen in terms of that screen real estate, but it also gives you the numpad. So if you're going to crunch numbers and those that want that, that might be the one to go with. But as far as this 13-inch one that we have here today, unless you're doing a lot of traveling and you don't need that extra performance, I would steer towards the bigger one, which is not that much heavier, but gives you better performance due to its thermal envelope. But I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in that comment section below. So please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share this video. Don't forget to leave a comment in that comment section below. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's a device or something out there you think I should review. I'll do my best to try to make that happen. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course my website, amdtechreviews.com. So until next time, this is Andrew from AMD Tech. See ya.